Welcome to the Human Services Committee. It's Wednesday, September 7th, 2011. It is now 7:37 in the evening. We have a quorum, and first of all, on our agenda is approval of the August 1st minutes. Is there a motion?
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, minutes have been approved. Okay, we're going to bounce around the agenda a tiny bit here to H3, first of all. Pardon me if I mess your name up. Donna Ziedrich? Jeddick? Correct. Wow. I had that really wrong. Donna, we want to welcome you. Donna is, on our agenda is execution of an agreement for an independent contractor services for the interim library director. The city manager will tell us about this.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the committee, good evening. You have before you a contract with a consulting firm that Ms. Jezik is associated with that we would be contracting for her services. As you know, we've been through several interim department directors over the last several years. Mr. Lyons currently serving as interim administrative services director. We try whenever possible to have existing city staff serve in that interim role. However, with the transitions that are happening at the Evanston Public Library, felt it was important to bring on an individual from outside the organization. Ms. Jezik, prior to coming to Evanston, has recently retired as the executive director of the Naperville Public Library, and certainly when individuals look at public libraries around the country, Naperville is always held as one of the finest municipal libraries in the United States. So we're very lucky that Ms. Jezik has agreed to serve. The term of the contract is 6 months with an extension. It's certainly the intention to move forward working with the library board on the recruitment of a permanent director during that time so we can allow Ms. Jezik to return to other pursuits after her time here with the city of Evanston. So we'd ask for the committee's approval to send forward this contract to the council.
Is there a motion to approve?
Yes, Madam Chair, I move approval of Resolution 51R11 authorizing a contract for interim library director, namely Ms. Donna Jezik.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? We're so happy you're here.
Thank you. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity to work with you.
Good, good. Anything else from any committee members? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, what do we want to go to next? Okay, we're going to the Township of Evanston August monthly bills. Is there a motion to approve?
I move approval of the township's August monthly bills.
And is there a second?
Second.
Should probably read into the record what they are. We will take a moment to determine what those are.
And then, Madam Chair, is there a second presentation on the Coast to Coast prescription program?
Yeah,
Is part of this discussion,
that's-
or?
I thought we would do the bills and then do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Vance, do you have a summary sheet of the bills? Is there a summary sheet? Ah. Okay. Okay, so to be efficient and read into the record, the August 2011 bills list total is $45,458.68. Check reports total is $170,793.29. And the August total for approval is $106,485.15. So again, I guess we'll ask for a motion to approve that.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. No, let's do the presentation. So where is that? Okay, just today we were received an email. Pat, would you like to address the discount cards? There is it Coast to Coast? Is that what it's called?
Right.
Okay.
What I've emailed the information prior to. What is being asked of and being through townships, which is a free of charge, at no cost to township at all, is a new what they call Coast to Coast prescription discount card that is available to any and all Evanston residents, free of charge. And it is administered, it has several townships have already actually done this card because it's actually involving the prescriptions that the residents can purchase. And the concept behind it is that what happens is that you can get a discount anywhere sometime from 35 to 45% with the card. It is designed for residents basically who are uninsured or underinsured, can't afford their medications, need to save money on prescriptions, those whose medications are not included in their insurance company's formularies, those whose insurance benefits do not extend to lifestyle medications, and those whose insurance does not cover medications for their pre-existing conditions. And the card basically it does not cost the resident anything. One of the questions that sometimes, because we do come across sometimes with medical that people have pets also, and they ask, are pet prescriptions discounted? Yes, if the prescription can be filled at a participating pharmacy. Also, you can get that done. The card offers discounts, overall discounts. It handles the Coast to Coast program, handles all the costs of the program, including printing the cards and administration. Distribution of the cards to all pharmacies in the township is done by Coast to Coast. So there's no township personnel time needed to administer this particular program at all. Also, what happens with the Coast to Coast card program, townships can earn 50 cents for certain prescriptions after their residents have used the card on 1,700 qualifying prescriptions. So it's also a give back to the township after a certain number of prescriptions have been done. But this is an offer that we think that should be availed to the residents of Evanston Township, and it doesn't cost anything. It just simply tells us that we make the commitment, we'll say yes, we agree to participate and disseminate the Coast to Coast prescription cards.
Are there any questions? Yes, Alderman Glover.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Supervisor Vance. I have a couple questions. Are we certain that the pharmacies and drugstores in Evanston will honor the card and accept it?
Yes, because I did talk with her, and I do know at this point when we talked, I do know that, I think she did tell me CVS Pharmacy is a participant in the program.
So, I mean, we have CVS, we have Walgreens, and shall we assume that the major chains
Yes,
participate in
according to Ms. Carlton,
Would that
who is
be-
the administrator.
And the pharmacies embedded in Dominic's, and I don't know if Jewel has pharmacies as well.
According to her, but you know what, to be on the, sir, I can check that out to make certain.
Yeah.
But I do know she did mention CVS to me
Just so we can make sure that Evanston residents who participate
in all the
actually have a
pharmacies.
place to go with
Okay.
this card. And then, do you have any idea how many participants we would get?
That can vary because we put it out everywhere. In different locations, identified locations that people could actually pick up the card. Because it may be a possibility, even for those people who may have some insurance, that the card may give them a better discount on that prescription than their insurance, so they could then choose.
And how are we going to market the card as being available to Evanston residents and distribute it to them? What's the plan?
One of the things I would be get with Ms., if approved, I would get with Ms. Carlton, because she was saying that they would handle all of that. They would print up all of the cards. We can also get it printed out. We can make sure that it is up on all the websites, the city, with links to various organizations and whatever, to make sure that it is dispersed, because it's just not for a specific group. It's underinsured. It's for a wider a range of people.
And how soon can this happen, do you think?
As soon as I get the okay that we're on board.
You'll put it in process, and then I guess I'm looking for what the target date would be for when the cards are available and operational.
Well, I would suspect probably within a 30-day period of time.
And any idea of the estimated revenue that would come back to the
Not
township?
at this point. Not at this point.
Anyone else? So, Ms. Vance, what do you need from us tonight?
I really need a motion from the committee to agreeing for the township to participate in the coast-to-coast prescription drug program.
I guess my question is it enough for this committee to do it, or do we need all the trustees? This is the township committee.
Right.
But I don't want to make the leap that we're the only body authorized or to make this step. I would move that we do this.
Okay. Staff has reminded me that this was not on the agenda tonight, so was not noticed. So it's probably more appropriate that it go directly to council.
Thank you.
So,
All right, let's do that.
That's fine, we'll do it Tuesday,
great.
Monday night.
Thank you.
And Ms. Vance, thank you for following up on this and doing what you can to make it available.
So we're going to H2. H2 is the proposed ordinance 56011, enacting a new subsection 1-17-4-3 of the city code to require replacement of sold or leased parkland. Okay, are there members? There are members of the rec board who are here. I need you to sign in if you wish to speak on this.
I've already signed in. I'm Larry Rapp.
Oh, okay. You signed in as a guest and not a speaker. So, Larry, I'm just going to pass this down to you if you just.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anyone else who wants to speak? No? Okay. No, yes?
Hi, my name is Larry Raffel, and I'm a member of the newly named Park and Recreation Board, if you recall, from the Rules Committee. We recently changed the name of the board, changed our mission, and changed our bylaws. And now we've brought before you this ordinance amending Title 1-17-4, Sale or Lease of Real Property. And what we're really looking at right here is not so much changing the ordinance, but adding some language to it that really kind of helps us guide the receipt of comparable land. Currently, with the sale or lease of property, we look at, or the ordinance looks at the area and receiving something suitable in area. And what we'd like to do in addition to that is also make sure that the Park and Recreation Board is able to look at the property that, say, is meant to be received in return so that it has a suitability for a greater or a similar or greater use in park property. Not simply the size, because the size isn't always of the right use. It's more the suitability of that particular property and the location as well as the size. So one of the things, what I'd like to do here is suggest some additional language to this proposed language, if I could. Is that allowable to?
Sure.
Okay.
You can suggest.
What you have before you in the A, where it says similar in area to the city property and/or facilities, I would simply like to cross out in area and just say similar or greater in suitability for park purposes. I think other than that, the language reads very well, and that it also, the other thing that's been added to the current ordinance is it really allows the Park and Recreation Board to make a recommendation to the City Council, which I think is really key in accepting a piece of property in exchange for property that's been either sold or through lease. And I think, having said that, I'd be happy. Does that need clarification, what I've just said on that, in terms of the language change? Okay.
Alderman Grover.
Reading the proposed ordinance, I was confused as to whether it applies to property swaps or city property sales, and if it applies to city property sales or loss of the property through a long-term lease agreement, how acquisition of comparable property would be at no cost to the city.
Well, if the city,
give me an example.
Okay, I'll run one, and then Doug. If the city, or say if a developer or another organization would like to purchase property from the city, and the city wants to sell that property, the city must receive property in exchange at no cost, so that in accepting property from a developer or anybody, we're not paying for that additional property.
So it's really requiring then the city council to mandate a swap, an exchange of property when it
sells.
if it were to
If
sell
it was to sell property, that's
or
correct.
a long-term lease.
And we currently have that in the ordinance, from my understanding. And we're just asking that the language be modified so that it's not strictly an area swap, and the park board can make a recommendation on the suitability of the property.
Any other questions? If not, I have one. Oh, Alderman Holmes.
I don't know, I just have a lot of issues with this.
Yeah.
I really do.
No, I do too. Larry, can you explain to us a little bit about what the genesis of this was?
Well, this is
What your concerns?
Well, I could speak on behalf of the board on this, and this is an issue we'd started discussing in January of this year, and the genesis of it is that open space in parks becomes an easy target for either sale to a developer or to some type of agency that wants to build on a piece of property. And we felt it was important for the board to the Park and Recreation Board to get ahead of this and really kind of look at the language of our current ordinance and strengthen it so that should we make a decision, or should the city council make a decision to sell property, that the park board would have a say on the type of property we receive in exchange. Does that answer your question? Or?
Yes, it does. I have a problem with this. First of all, I think, speaking for myself, I can't imagine that I would ever approve of any parkland being sold, and I think I've stated that in previous council meetings. And I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but parkland is really precious. We certainly heard about that during, the discussion on Chandler-Newburger, and we've had discussions also in my ward at the Noyes Cultural Arts Center, and expansion of a parking lot, for example, just would not be looked on favorably. And if there was a specific example that you could cite, maybe that would be helpful. But I think in some ways this might be tying the hands of the council in a way that is not entirely appropriate. But in saying that, as I mentioned before, I just can't imagine that we would be selling off parkland. On the other hand, I can't imagine where we would be getting a suitable piece of property if we did sell off parkland, where that piece of property would be coming from.
Well, we didn't have, there was no specific sale that we had in mind. We just wanted to strengthen this ordinance because although this city council may believe that, there may be in the future a city council that may, or some type of sale that may occur, and all we're asking is that the park board be allowed to make a recommendation.
I also can't imagine that the citizens of Evanston would let that happen.
Right. I mean, you're not elected.
Alderman Holmes, did you want to speak on
Well,
that?
no, I have issues with it, and when I read it, and I just think that it's overstepping the authority of the Park and Recreations Board in terms of doing that. I think this is a council responsibility, and regardless to who sits on the council now, what we may or may not do, I'm not going to tie the hands of future councils by telling them what they, that they would have to get approval of a board.
We're not asking for approval. We're simply asking to be allowed to make a recommendation.
But what would keep you from doing that now? Through comments and through actions or reports back to the committee that this would come to before it would even get to the council, which would be this committee, I believe.
Right, but from my understanding, there's nothing in the current ordinance that even allows us to make a recommendation. I mean, although we do and we can because that's
Yeah,
our
I was
charge,
gonna say.
but I don't believe it's written in the ordinance. I mean, we're not asking for necessarily for the council to take our recommendation. We're just being allowed to make a recommendation.
And I understand that. And I'm saying that that happens now. So I don't know what was the board feeling, something has happened to make this necessary? That's where I get confused.
No, I don't think any particular incident has happened. I think as a park board, I can speak on behalf of myself, at least in the discussions we've had at the park board, we're always looking for ways to help maintain the quality, the high level of park properties that we do have. And we just felt that this was a way to even strengthen that particular charge. And in no way are we saying that we would lessen the role of the city council.
That's my issue.
Okay. Alderman Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I shared the Park Board's concerns about potential loss of parkland and green space and shrinkage of those open spaces in Evanston and assigning value to city assets, including recreation facilities and potentially open space. And you can get all the guarantees. We can produce lots of guarantees from us that we would never let that happen, but that's, I understand, really not enough to secure the kind of preservation of open space and park land in Evanston that perhaps the board is looking for. And I understand the park board's interest in wanting to play a recommendation role if the city were to ever undertake a land swap, open space for development space. And perhaps the ordinance is drafted. I'm not sure it does what you want it to do. There's a lot of language in this amendment that apparently makes some committee members uncomfortable and me as well. Maybe there's a way of redrafting this so that it does what you want it to do, which is to require the park board recommendation in circumstances where Evanston parkland is implicated. Without the specific language about there shall be a swap of land. And because I didn't understand this language as it was drafted to begin.
I can understand that. I think there is a little bit of confusion when I look at the way the ordinance has been drafted. It really doesn't mention parkland. It just mentions city-owned real property and/or facilities. And I think the key to the language that we're looking for is that it really be identified as the sale of parkland or facilities. So, I mean, in that aspect, I think maybe it would be worthwhile to go back and redraft it with legal counsel to get it to where it clearly identifies it as parkland or recreational facilities.
And please note that the City Council and this committee look to our Park and Recreation Board as our experts on all issues involving our open space, green space, parkland. But let's make sure that any ordinance that we consider seriously, like this, does exactly what you want it to do and nothing more. So we don't get tripped up on other language. That would be good.
Okay,
Yeah.
I would agree
And I
with
know
that.
you spent a lot of time working on this and drafting this language. Some tweaking, and I think we could overcome some significant objections to it.
I would tend to agree with that.
All right.
We'll bring it back next month if everyone agrees. I want to say one other thing, and that is during these budget deliberations that we've had over the past couple of years, there is a great deal of uncertainty and I think concern about what direction they may take. And I want to make sure that we as a council involve our boards and commissions in that discussion before we go off and let the discussion have a life of its own. That we reach out again, because the volunteers that we have serving on boards and commissions are very invested in the work of their board, and we're very respectful of that and appreciative of that. But sometimes in our rush to get our other work done, we don't step back and take that time to involve them in the way that we probably ought to do. So that's, I think we need to take that into consideration too. Okay, so we'll come. Is everyone agreed that we'll bring this back next month and discuss it a little bit more? Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay with you?
That's fine with me, yes.
Okay, terrific. Okay. We're down to items for discussion, and HH1 is the relocation of the Township of Evanston offices to the Evanston Civic Center. I had asked staff for a report that would basically get all in one place information regarding the lease at the township's current offices and the possibility that that could be moved at some point into the Civic Center. And I know we've had pieces of this before, but we've never had it all in one place. And I think it's important to start the discussion. We had an interesting presentation by Commissioner Suffredin earlier this evening at Rules Committee. Pretty much he said there that because we're a coterminous municipality with a township, that we might be realizing a significant savings by looking at abolishing the township. And so I think this is the proper place to have that discussion. And I think we really need to look at, in a very organized way, over a period of time, of what savings we could do to deliver services in the most efficient way. And that doesn't mean abolishing the township. That first came up this evening during a question to Commissioner Suffredin. But I think over time, there's a feeling that it would be beneficial to consider moving the township offices into the Civic Center. At least that's my feeling. And so I wanted to get all of that information in one place and open it up to discussion for the committee. And if this is something the committee is interested in doing, we can continue the discussion, and if it isn't, we won't. So are there any thoughts about that? Alderman Grover.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for requesting the information. I'm glad to have it all together. My intuition tells me that we would save money by bringing the township here. There would be some economies of scale we could realize, folding some township functions, administrative type functions in with the cities. But looking at our rent obligations for the township offices of $72,000 a year, It's really $144,000 more dollars over the next 2 years till the end of its term. And we would still be on the hook for that, clearly, unless we find a subtenant for that space. So the cost that we would save by moving the township offices depend upon finding a successor to the space.
Well, there's certainly...
Those are my thoughts, and I'd love to have the input of our township officials as
Right.
well, if
I think
they're inclined to.
There's certainly a space consideration, too. I mean, as part of the questions that we asked, what are the space requirements? Does that space exist in the Civic Center? How would that space be configured? Where would it be? I mean, so these are all very early questions and would take some time. And Doug, thank you for answering those questions. But is this a direction that the committee thinks it would like to move in?
I think it's a good direction to pursue.
Okay.
I think if we are, in fact, have any intention or thought of at some point merging the township services back into the city domain, doing with the township, it's an interim step that might be to our advantage in terms of working with personnel and making the transition more smooth.
Isn't there another step that we have to think about, because it would have to be done by referendum, so we just can't
Right.
do this. And so I think there's a lot more steps. If we're talking about just inviting the township to come back to the city of Evanston, it's a whole nother, different kind of discussion. And the whole lease thing, I think, is an important one to look at. I think Alderman Grover made that point in terms of if we can't find someone to sublease, then there's really no savings. And because we'd be still on the hook for the rent. And that's one thing. And then the other part of it is, looking at how this would go on a referendum to happen, because we just can't make that decision as a council.
Well, I would like to think of it separately, because I do think, and again, the discussion of abolishing the township really just came up tonight in terms of response to a question to Commissioner Suffredin, and I thought his response was interesting. I mean, my interest, I think, is the lease is up in September 2013, 2 years from now. It's not too early to be thinking about whether or not we want to continue that lease. There is a period of time that we need to give notice to the property owner that the lease will not be continued. And so this will give us a little bit of time to talk about that, talk about the cost of moving, talk about the space requirements, talk about whether moving is a good idea, whether that's something that you would be interested in. So I want to be very careful that it not be perceived by anyone at the township that this is a strategy to eliminate the township, because that's not what it is. It really is a cost-saving measure to bring the township back into the city. I was amazed because I had not read the lease very carefully previously, that as part of the lease you're paying property tax. So not-for-profits paying property taxes as part of your lease is not something that you would be paying here. And so there are other, I think, savings that make sense. But again, we're starting early enough that we can have a thorough discussion of it, take a look at all the pros and cons, understand exactly what it is that we want to do with working with the township. And we're not making a rush decision. I just don't want to make a decision at the last minute about any of this. So,
I think, we also should make it very clear that I think you're right that Commissioner Suffredin certainly did answer a question tonight, but I think that this question has come up on this council before, so it's not a new concept. I think that we have to be fair in saying that this came up several months back, in terms of whether to abolish the township or not. So it came up on this committee, so I think we need to be clear about that. So there was some thoughts. I can't remember the meeting.
Right.
Last
think,
May.
Yeah, I think it
So it
came
has
up a
been up
couple of
before.
times, but I don't
Yes.
think we really discussed it.
I understand that, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying that it didn't just generate tonight.
Right. Well, the terms of the referendum, I didn't have any idea of how this works, and I would be interested in knowing how it works. And I think that's information that this committee should have, and we should have an understanding of that. And I thought what he had to say was fascinating. And I think that's part of our duty, is to just look at everything that we can to see how we can save money but provide the kinds of services and the level of service that you are providing. And that's really very important to me, and I'm sure to the rest of the committee as well. Is there anybody else who? Yes, Alderman Grover.
Thank you again. I had two questions. First to Mr. Gaynor. Did you perhaps need more information about the lease documents? Did your staff feel as if it had all the documents it needed to evaluate the terms of the lease, and did you have complete documents? I think one of the responses was there was no early termination provision in the lease documents provided. Were there other things we should look at?
Well, I would want to
should
take
we-
another look at the document, and I would like to sort of categorize the various issues that this committee would like to review. We have not spent time with township folks as it relates to how much space they need, and in particular. And there's been discussions amongst the city managers with council about the possibility of leasing space here. Is there space available? We haven't moved forward because of the possibility, because of this discussion from time to time of the township possibly moving here, as well as the health clinic that was going to possibly be moved in here. So we've been putting those leases on hold. As far as information is concerned, any information, more information that you're looking for, you have the lease. I don't think there's any other additional information other than what you have in the lease, other than talking with the township as far as how much space they need, as well as technologies that they need and to operate. Parking shouldn't be an issue for us here. So, I mean, that thoroughly has to be evaluated and reviewed.
I'd recommend that we ask staff to follow up on some of these answers to get more information specific as to space in the Civic Center and the possibility of finding a subtenant for the space at Main and Dodge. We do have a crack economic development team. Perhaps they already have some prospects. The other question on the separate track of the abolishing the township, I think it may be time for us to get some legal opinion as to what the mechanisms are for abolishing a township, whether it's by referendum or by decision of the township trustees. I don't know if it's controlled by state law or by the township statute, which would be state law, and perhaps we could ask direct staff to help us answer some of those questions. So we have a little direction if that's the direction that the council, sitting as trustees, wants to go.
I'd also like to ask Supervisor Vance and Bonnie, Assessor Wilson, how much, if you can just over the next few months, try to determine the square footage of space that you need. You've done that, and we have that information? Okay.
And if I may, Madam Chair, in studying both these questions about alternative space in this big house that is the Civic Center, we want everybody here. We're a big house. And the question of the existence of the township, I want to include our township elected officials in that discussion, most certainly. And we need their feedback, we need their input, we need their perspectives on the core values of the services that are provided at the township. And so maybe this discussion at our township trustees meeting September 19th, that could be part of the larger discussion.
Is that acceptable to you, that we continue this discussion at that meeting? No,
We're meeting on September 19th to discuss the township budget again,
right.
among other things.
Yeah, and I think at that time, it just would be helpful to have all of this background information together at that time. So we can, figure out how viable moving actually is. And frankly, from city staff, I don't know whether the recommendation is going to be to hold space for a potential health center, or what that decision is going to be in terms of, occupancy here. It may not be a possibility, in which case we'll have to think about what happens. But if we can try to approach this in a very organized manner, I think it will help. It will help everyone make the best decision in the end. And so I think that's a good idea, Alderman Grover, to continue this part of the discussion there and share with all of the township trustees the information that we've acquired. Anything else? Okay. Communications. Alderman Burris would like to address us on the dangerous dogs. Just for everyone's notice, I just wanted to make sure that everyone had seen a copy of the amendments to the dangerous dog ordinance that I had worked with staff on, and thank the committee for allowing me to do that. This issue is not before the committee, it's at council. And so the reason why it's here is just basically a communication to the rest of the committee that we had completed that, and that would be a discussion item, an item for discussion at council. So, yes, Alderman Burris.
Hi, I'm Alderman Colleen Burris, 647 Custer. First, I'm actually here to say thank you to the committee to getting the dangerous dog ordinance as was presented to you through this committee and on to council. And the other reason I'm here this evening is because it is a serious issue. This past weekend, I know I shared with many of you a serious incident that happened with a dangerous, vicious dog in the 9th Ward over, I think it was on Sunday evening. The police were involved. Just want to kind of tell you a little bit about this because it goes directly to this ordinance, and the ordinance is much better than it was, but we also need even more strict policy. What happened over the weekend is a homeowner that has 3 dogs he's been receiving tickets since, I think, 2008, has ignored the tickets of his dogs not having rabies shots or being licensed. His dogs have bitten people and other animals. And then this weekend, one of the dogs, happens to be a pit bull, it could be any breed, but it happened to be a pit bull, was out, chased after a gentleman walking his dog, attacked the dog. The gentleman was fighting the dog off for a block, finally got to his home. The dog started to attack the resident. The resident finally got inside his home. The dog continued to bark and snarl and scare everyone in the courtyard area. The police were called. The police came. The dog went to attack the police officer. The police officer had to pull his gun and shoot the dog. The police officer had injuries and had to get stitches from this. The dog ran home after being shot in the head to its owner, and the owner was then belligerent with the police officer that the police officer had shot his dog. We have done nothing as a city to protect our residents from this situation. This owner is clearly using his dogs as a weapon to intimidate others. This happened a block from Washington School. This happened next to people that have children that need to walk their kids to school. We need to do something to stop these people. It's not everyone, but there are a limited number of people that we are allowing to have these animals that are literally terrorizing and threatening neighborhoods. I know I shared with several of you emails that I received from residents in my ward. They're frightened. They want something done. So once again, I'm here to say thank you, and hopefully we can get this passed with even stronger verbiage. And the chief is here tonight to kind of talk about the problems that we're having with enforcing and doing actually something about this. This gentleman has more animals, and we can't do anything to him. He won't pay his fines. He won't get rid of the dogs that are terrorizing. We have no mechanism to make him do anything. So I don't know if the chief wants to address. Thank you again for getting it out of committee.
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry.
If I may, just a quick question. Of the ordinance, the draft that we have in front of us, which are your floor amendments? It wasn't clear to me. Are they highlighted in yellow? I have a red line version, but I don't know.
Okay, let me,
I missed the last meeting. I wasn't
wait
a
a
witness.
second. Okay, wait till I find it.
Yes, I'm on page 100, Alderman Fisk.
Okay,
That's where the draft ordinance is in our packet.
okay. I will forget my computer and I will go to this. Okay, we made two changes, or I should say additions. One is on section 2, paragraph A, which allows the
Change shall instead of may, right?
yes,
That was where that.
yes, and we talked about that at committee
Yes.
previously. And I'm sorry, Doug, when was this printed out? This was, did I just have the last?
Is there a way to
The
produce a draft of the ordinance, having missed the last meeting, so that I can see the evolution of it?
Yeah,
I think that would be
it's
really
actually,
helpful
yeah,
to
it's
me.
actually in the,
Madam Chair?
wait, I found it. Okay, I found it. It's on, it's just not showing up in the sidebar here.
No, because she went with the staff to get the change. We didn't make the, we only made the one change.
Right, the first change, and I'm having trouble finding it, I'm sorry for the delay.
Excuse me, Madam Chair?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Hi. Kathy Aganis from the Law Department. I just, to assist in answering the question in terms of the formatting of the ordinance that's in your packet, the amendments that were actually passed by the committee at its meeting are in bold in addition to being underlined. So those are the amendments that passed.
Right.
Now, the additional amendments that have been worked on since the time that Human Services passed it are the ones that are highlighted,
Okay.
And that's the difference. So everything that's
Okay.
underlined is an addition that was
Perfect.
passed. If it's bold, it was passed, it was amended by the committee and then passed. If it's highlighted, it's been
Perfect.
amended but not passed by anyone, just proposed.
Okay, then we have two changes.
And what's the
And-
source of the highlighted amendments?
That's me.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me. And as you'll recall, I asked the committee for the privilege of working with the law department to make sure that due process was included in the ordinance. So the changes are basically that that the dog owner may, at his or her own expense, include an evaluation by his or her own behaviorist, and that the chief will consider that as part of his recommendation. That's the first thing. And that's to make sure that a dog owner has the ability to enter into the discussion, but the decision is still the chief's decision. The second one is again, a due process consideration that, and provides for an opportunity for the dog owner at his or her own expense to appeal the decision of the chief of police to the circuit court. And most animal ordinances have this ability to appeal, and actually most of our ordinances have the ability to appeal. That was not in the ordinance previously, so again,
So
at their own expense.
If you forgive me for rehashing this, no, I should be
Sure.
punished for missing the meeting.
No, but just so
but two
everyone
questions,
knows
yeah.
that this is
Then,
at council.
first, my read of Section 7, the Section J appeal, doesn't specifically say the cost to be borne by the owner. And then, what is a behaviorist? Should I have one? I don't know what's
You
the-
may be your own behaviorist. No, a behaviorist
Is
is,
it a technical term?
yes, and
for-
the chief actually works with at least one or possibly more experts in the field of animal behavior. And
They're
as-
certified.
yeah, who's certified, and again, that's at the chief's choice. So, and those are the only two changes.
I would move that we move this on to the council. I mean, it's already at the council.
It's at council.
at
Yeah,
council.
it's at council, but as a courtesy, I just wanted the committee to know what the result of my meeting and discussion with.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just communications.
I
That's all.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. Did you want to say something, Chief?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wanted to forecast perhaps some additional floor amendments to the ordinance as we've worked through this. Some things that needed to be considered are, if you read the ordinance in its totality, there are only 2 times when the city police department is authorized to seize an animal. And I think that speaks to some issues that arose this weekend, that it is far too narrow, that once someone has acquired a number of tickets for not controlling or caring for their pets, at some point in time, we need to be able to more dramatically intervene and seize the dog, have the dogs held at the owner's expense while it's adjudicated at the circuit court, or one of the things I've asked Michelle Mason-Cup to further review, whether or not we have the statutory ability as a home rule community to move that review to administrative adjudication to move this along more quickly. And I appreciate that you may be resistant to that. However, in trying to be equitable and fast about this, it's at least an option to be considered by the council.
Right.
And
The dog
legal.
would already be in custody, though, is that correct?
Well, I need the authority to do that. Right now, unless I can prove that the dog is already dangerous and is at large, or the dog is already dangerous and being trained to dogfight, those are the only 2 times that the dog can be legally seized by the police department. And so, much like the situation that was alluded to by Alderman Burris this weekend, we have a dog owner who's pretty much proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they have some issues in caring for their dog in a responsible way. If there's other dogs involved, we have no latitude to deal with those dogs. We have no authority to control those dogs until he can prove that he's got license, he's got rabies shots, and so on and so forth. So as long as we're changing all this, I would strongly suggest to the committee that we look at all the options to address this completely, because this incident this weekend is more or less the poster child for irresponsible dog ownership. We've been issuing citations since 2006 or 8. The citations have gone to collection. It doesn't matter. The behavior has not been modified. The pets have not been controlled by virtue of the attack this weekend and other incidents. So I am asking that as long as we're going to consider changes, we look at the broad scope of what we're really trying to accomplish, and that is focusing our attentions on those irresponsible pet owners that cause neighborhoods so much angst.
Thank you, Chief. Can you tell me what you've done in previous instances? Because we've had other dogs labeled as dangerous and impounded and euthanized. I mean, what have you done in those situations?
That's been one option. A lot of times owners, I think there's a section in the statute where if your dog is declared dangerous, you've got 10 days to remove it from the jurisdiction. And then you don't have to have the insurance. You don't have to have the dog pen. You don't, the dog's not there, none of our ordinances apply. And so we have availed ourselves to all those options. Some folks have had dangerous dogs and complied with the insurance and the kennel and all the things they're supposed to do. So it's a case-by-case basis. And to speak to the behaviorist issue that came up earlier was that we outsource that evaluation. We don't have the expertise on staff to say what if the dog is appropriate, has been socialized appropriately. And also, you really don't want people who may have been involved in other issues with the family or the animal making the decision. It's a standalone decision by an outside vendor.
Right.
What would be your, I'm sorry. What would be your objection to sending it to administrative adjudication?
Well, I'd like to know what other communities do when they handle cases like this. I'm not sure that they don't use administrative adjudication, but I'm not sure that they do. I know the circuit court deals with this all the time. Again, I mean, my focus was just on trying to make sure that an owner of a dog who gets loose, who may be in a compromising situation, not at all what Alderman Burris is talking about, doesn't get bound up or in a system and inappropriately punished, either the owner or the dog, that there is, again, due process. It's the same for people.
But if you have someone, and in my ward, we have a case where tickets have been being given since, I know, at least 2007, maybe before then, where people don't pay the fines, they don't come. So if this would help get them through the system for it so that we know what to do.
Right.
I mean, I don't understand the objection.
Well, I think part of what is confusing to me here is that if you'll remember at the beginning of when we all came on the council, one of the things that I was interested in was taking a look at our animal ordinance and bringing it up to date with what state-of-the-art ordinances in other communities that are light years ahead of us in having a process that deals with dangerous dogs. And there are dangerous dogs. And some communities make the distinction between dangerous dogs and vicious dogs. I mean, they even have a more strenuous way of approaching this than we do. And maybe that's something that we need to do. I mean, that's another
But that's a
another
difference
criteria.
than in terms of getting them to.
But what I'm concerned about here is that we're sort of piecemealing something together that I want to give the police department, what it needs in order to address these issues, but I'm not sure that cutting and pasting in this way is going to result in the best ordinance for us, and perhaps it can be dealt with at administrative adjudication. I know our police department I have absolute, faith in them, but I'd want to hear more about whether administrative adjudication is the appropriate place for this to go. There are people in this town, I think we have over 9,000 dogs in this town. There are dog bites every day. There are instances of issues at the dog beach. There are, things that happen that are accidents. There are things that happen that are terrible. And we need to have an ordinance that addresses the new relationship that municipalities have with dogs. We didn't used to have dog beaches. I mean, it used to be when you went out on the street, your dog was on a leash. And if your dog wasn't on the leash, you got a ticket. And now we have dog parks. We have people who, unfortunately, are allowing their dogs to, run loose. And we have the dog beach and other, situations. So that was my thought when we first came to Human Services was, boy, we really need to, if we're going to be updating the city code, we really need to take a look at bringing our animal ordinance up to date. I do think if the police department thinks that they need some tools that they don't have to deal with issues that Alderman Burris is bringing up, that we certainly should give them those tools. But there are other communities that I know very well who deal with these issues and I would like us to take the opportunity to look at some of those ordinances and see what they do, because it may actually help us a lot.
Well, do you think in the meantime, I mean, because we can always go back and amend, I guess, the ordinance if later, but I mean, in order to give our chief and his staff some tools to deal with now,
right?
That if we could add that and then, go ahead and try to deal with this. And I still am not sure about the why the objection to the administrative duplication, because I think that gets us to the process much faster in terms of trying to deal with people who are not being responsible, because we're not talking about responsible dog owners or pet owners. We're talking about people who operate on their own sort of like agendas, it seems to me.
Yeah. A responsible pet owner actually can get caught in this web more quickly than you would imagine. And I would be fine with the administrative adjudication as long as there was due process available to appeal.
Yeah.
That would be fine.
But that's a whole idea of having,
Yeah, and I want to thank Alderman Burris for bringing this here, because it's better for us at least to discuss that here as long as we're discussing amendments than it is to do floor amendments at the council. But I'm wondering, Chief, if you can just tell me, when you give tickets, doesn't that give you some authority? I mean, they have to pay, don't they? Isn't there
Not
Isn't there a
exactly.
penalty?
They don't.
I mean, do we not have to pay our tickets?
Well, and once
Responsible
again,
people do.
one of the issues is when legislative bodies promulgate rules, there's an assumption that everybody's going to play by the rules. There are, and frankly, I've been employed my entire adult life because there's a portion of society who won't play by the rules. And what I'm trying to say as gently as I can, that there are going to be outliers that will not comply with the ordinances, and we have found ourselves in a situation where I have no resistance to due process, even if there's multiple layers at administrative adjudication and then an option to go to the circuit court. But what I'm interested in is during that due process time that we, the city, control the animals rather than an owner who's proven himself to be irresponsible. And so the non-payment of fines is a huge issue. The situation that Alderman Holmes has referred to, there's at least 45 unpaid dog tickets. And those dog tickets are now consistently referred to collection, and there has still been no compliance. And so we're talking about those individuals who just aren't going to play by the rules, and their not playing by the rules puts other people and pets at danger. And so we're talking about the smallest percentage of pet owners who are going to be irresponsible, no matter our good intentions. And so as a protection for the community, we need these remedies for that small group.
So are you talking about the possibility of bringing 45 dogs into the animal shelter to be impounded?
No.
But I mean, he said there were 45 outstanding tickets.
For this one household.
For this one dog?
For
Yes.
this one
Oh,
household.
okay, so this one owner.
Yes.
I just don't understand how that could happen.
Well,
Can't we
I
turn
mean,
their
that
water
we
off?
don't have some control over that.
We-
How is that?
Wait, how is it, we tow cars, we boot cars, we turn people's water off. This is serious business. Why is it that we cannot, what haven't we given you? What tool haven't we given you to somehow affect this before it becomes an issue of confiscating the dog?
I want to thank Michelle Mason-Cup from the legal department, who's worked very diligently on this project, and the issue of administrative adjudication she's reviewing, and the issue of seizing the dog during the due process procedure is one that she continues to review and will advise us on. And I think that is the most reasonable step, because I can see a situation where I would be hesitant to shut off water because you may have one person in a household who's, to be perfectly blunt, acting like a nitwit with their dog, and the rest of the family's got nothing to do with this. And so I would be hesitant to get out that big a hammer. But I think if we seize the dog or allow us the latitude to seize the animal, that takes the danger from the community while we're figuring out what to do next. And I really think if we focus our governmental intrusion to the specific problem, it will be most effective.
I do think you just need a set of tools to do that, and I think it's maybe aside from this ordinance, it really is part of the bad dog owner ordinance, or where those issues are discussed in our code. It really has little to do with the animal. Getting a dog to getting owner to get a dog to a vet to have a rabies shot can reveal a lot of problems if you have an observant vet who's there to check out the dog at the time. So I think all these play into really letting these other issues not even come to a head. We just keep the dogs safer. The owners are responsible, and we do it that way.
Yes, sir.
One of the, obviously I spend a lot of time thinking about this because that's what I do with my life, think about dogs. But a lot of other communities actually, before you're even allowed to get a dog license or bring a dog into the city, have to go through an education program. And as part of the education program, various communities have brochures that, or classes, or have to meet with a behaviorist with their animal, which all sounds a little bit over the top to us because we don't require any of that. But there are communities that do. And all of that is an effort to educate people into the responsibilities of dog ownership. And in the wrong hands, a dog or anything else can be dangerous. And as part of a safe community, we don't want that to happen. And so again, as we're talking about how to solve these problems, it may be one family member, as you say, Chief. It may not be the whole family. It may be that the whole family's not aware of it. I can't imagine somebody can't be aware of 45 tickets. But if that's the tool that you need, then I'm sure that the council will give that to you. Just as long as we do have the due process in place. Because for the great number of animals, this is not their fault. This is bad handling. And a lot of times, dogs can be rehabilitated. Sometimes they can't, unfortunately. But I think it's our responsibility, too, as a council, to reach out into the community and say, this is your personal responsibility when you have a dog. And it's not just an extension, cute little muffin trotting down the street, but it's, potentially has an impact on people and quality of life. So we need to be very, very careful how we do that. Again, I've seen this happen over and over again of good dogs in bad hands who end up tragically, and there's no reason for it. And owners who try to do the right thing and in the worst cases lose control for a minute and end up with a euthanized animal. And that's a very traumatic thing for everyone involved. It's not the case we're talking about with Alderman Burris, obviously. We're talking about a criminally irresponsible dog owner. And that's a shame that we even have to be discussing that. But obviously the tools that you need will be provided to you.
Thank you, Alderman.
If I can speak for the committee.
Oh, I think he should have whatever is necessary to get it done. Okay. And I think that, it's similar to when we talk about home-based businesses. We're not talking about those that do the right thing.
Right.
but those that don't do the right thing. And I think that when you talk about having brochures and education, which I think is wonderful, then we have to also think about what that's going to cost to the city.
Exactly.
And then in terms of fees that would have to be passed on to the owners of whatever animals that they might be, because that, to me, would be a part of that. So that takes us to, when we're looking at best practices and what's happening in other communities, I want that to be a part of it as well.
Yes, and certainly that would be part of the licensing fee that would be provided to, each person coming for a license. I will say something, just one really quick educational thing about rabies shots, and that is best practice again. Some dogs are allergic to rabies shots, and titering is an example of us being able to maintain that level of protection against rabies in an animal without providing rabies shots. So there's all sorts of new stuff out there for us to consider as a community. We should be progressive with our animals. Okay, thanks for letting me go on. Okay, we're ready to adjourn. Anybody have anything else they want to say or talk about? Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
I signed on the speaker list.
Oh, for the Mental Health Board. Okay, I'm sorry, Jeff. Gosh, and we made you sit through all of that.
Don't
I hope
worry
you have
about
a dog.
It was very educational. I'm Jeff Cochran. I really just wanted to take a minute of your time and thank you for that, indulging me tonight. I am the newly elected chair of the Mental Health Board, taking over from Marcia Achenbach. She fulfilled her term and rotated off the board. I started a couple of months ago, and I'm just now making it here tonight. But I wanted to thank you for your previous support, the committee as a whole, and then I also wanted to implore you for your future support, especially with the upcoming budget process. As I'm sure you are well aware, this is the time when the agencies that we fund as a city, as a township, these agencies, the people that come to them for services, this is the time when they need them the most. And in turn, they need the funding that we provide them to give these people these services. So I just wanted to make sure that was emphatically noted to you all, as I'm sure you are aware. And with that, I will turn the mic over. Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Cochran, for coming tonight. It would be very helpful, I think, to this committee, to the City Council, to have a good understanding of exactly how many Evanston residents are touched by the services funded through the Mental Health Board, and in how many agencies. And I know that I was previous chair of the Mental Health Board. You do a lot of outcome measuring, and it would be very helpful for us to see in this last year for the allocations to our agencies in Evanston, what kind of outcomes we've been getting from the purchase services there.
Absolutely.
That would be great. We look forward to...
We definitely do a lot of outcome measures, and we have those as far as our own review of the funding process that we do as a board specifically, as you know. And we also have those recorded, so we'll definitely make those available to you as the budget process unfolds.
Right. Looking forward to seeing you again, I hope.
Thank you. Me too. Thank you.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn? Thank you very much. Oh, our next meeting.